So in this video, we're going to learn the final skill that we need before creating our big to-do list app in the next video, and that is controlling the keyboard. So let's create a new project, and first off, we'll just have a simple text field, which will show us the problem that we currently have that we need to be able to solve. So we'll call it controlling the keyboard, save it in the usual place. And then jump over first off to main storyboard. And all we're going to have here is a good old text field. I'm just going to put it up there, and I'm not even going to bother resizing it. So let's just run that and see how the keyboard behaves. Okay, so here we go. I've clicked on the text field and our keyboard has come up, but there are two issues here. The main one is that there is no way to close the keyboard down. So if I press return, for example, that doesn't do anything at all because I haven't defined it to do anything. And also, one normally expects to be able to tap outside the keyboard and it will shut the keyboard down. But that doesn't happen by default, so we need to program both of those behaviors into our app. Fortunately, it's not that tricky, so let's find out how to do it. So we'll jump over to viewcontroller.swift, and we'll solve the simplest problem first, which is the touching outside the keyboard issue. So we want the keyboard to shut down if the user taps outside the keyboard somewhere. And we can do that using the touches began method. So this is a method that already exists. We can tell that because we're overriding it by adding some extra code to it. And this method will be run whenever the user touches the main area of our app. So it won't run when the user touches the keyboard, but whenever they touch this area around here, that will run this method. So to shut down the keyboard, all we do is self, which remember refers to the view controller, and then within the view controller we're looking for the view, and then within the view we're ending the editing, and we want to force that to happen. So we set that to true. So let's see that in action. We should now find that whenever we tap on our app outside where the keyboard is, it runs the touches began method, which will end editing and remove the keyboard from the view. And here we go. So let's tap outside the keyboard, and you can see that that now shuts down the keyboard, which we can bring back if we want by tapping in the box. There we go. So that's our first problem solved. The second problem is we want the keyboard to disappear when the return key is pressed. That's a little bit more involved, but not too much. The first thing we need to do is add a new type for our view controller here. And this is going to be UI text field delegate. So that essentially gives the view controller more control over text fields than it had before. And then we're going to edit the method text field should return. There we go. So this method will be called whenever the return button down here is pressed. And what we need to do is shut down the keyboard. You would have thought we would use the same code here, down here, but we use a slightly different code. You notice that this method has a variable called text field in it, which we can use to refer to the text field that is currently selected. So we use text field to get that, and then resign first responder. which is essentially a way of saying shut down the keyboard that is associated with that text field being edited. And then you'll notice also that this arrow to bool, that means that this method needs to return a boolean. So we'll just return true. Okay, just before we run that, one other thing we need to do is control drag from our text field to the view controller. Try that again. And set the delegate of the text field to the view controller, just so that the view controller has the powers that it needs over the text field to be able to resign the first responder and shut down the keyboard. So we should now find that when we press the return button, the keyboard is shut down. And of course, we could then do all sorts of other things. So if we wanted to save some information when the user presses return, or do a Google search or whatever, we would write that code in there. And here we go. So now when we press return, the keyboard shuts down. And of course we can bring it back just by tapping in there, and also shut it down by tapping elsewhere on the screen. So there we go. Any app that you create that uses the keyboard probably will need something like this to give the user a little bit of control over shutting the keyboard down when they want to. All right, but that's as far as we need to go on keyboard control for now. So we're now finally ready to create our big to-do list app, and we'll do that in the next video.